Hey guys, welcome back. I am glad you're here to join me. We're going to finish up with our art history class. Now, we are going to revisit some of what we talked about last time, and we're going to break into the 19th century. And that's really where the idea of modern art began to form. And so we step back to the 19th century and the idea of realism. Many realism artists wanted to actually depict the stark differences between the working lower classes and the middle and upper classes in the midst of the Industrial Revolution. It was a movement to make a point and be heard. Then we moved into Impressionism. This is where they focused on light and life. These artists wanted to capture reality in a single moment with things like the change of light or weather, small movements of fabric in a breeze, the surface of water. And at the tail end, we have post-impressionism, where they began to experiment in light, color, brushstrokes, and shapes to add different depth without being as realistic. It's really the bridge between impressionism and imaginative art that came into the late 19th century, early 20th century. When we began to see the rise of symbolism in artwork. This is a movement in reaction to realistic nature of the early 19th century artwork. Artists were really trying to escape from the realities of everyday life. So they began to use symbols and myth and nature to express emotion and find deeper meaning in their storytelling. Oftentimes they were more otherworldly, imaginative, very focused on literary elements in their storytelling. Another imaginative element of art was Art Nouveau. And this was really something that was stylized, it was ornamental, it was earthy in its colors, it was inspired by nature, very organic, lots of shapes and lines, linear lines, very detailed artwork. Again, it was a very much art that inspired fantasy and escapism. Hello, 20th century! Doo-doo-doo. All right, this is where we see Expressionism come into play. Expressionism really became popular during the time of the Great War in the early 20th century. Now, they wanted to evoke strong emotion from their viewers. You would take a look at it and it was messy. They used distorted shapes and angles. They used bright, bold colors, sometimes lots of dark colors, lots of heavy lines. Artists really wanted to capture the events of the day with that emotion behind it, and that was a very new idea for the general public to soak in. Now, Expressionism has another connected form called Fauvism. Fauvism was a kind of expressive art form that often used bold colors, and many artists actually ended up smearing the paint straight out of the tube for that boldness. It also involved many simplified lines, almost childlike when you look at them. That's another form of art that's really up to your personal taste. Some people really enjoy looking at it, other people not so much. That introduced Cubism. So Pablo Picasso, one of the all-time favorites, very geometric in its form, but it's also very distorted in its angles and structure or perspective. Artists were trying to pull away from realism almost completely to where subjects in the artwork are actually broken up and cubed in nature. You're seeing different perspectives of faces and hands, and it's all distorted. Artists that focused on Cubism really introduced the whole idea of abstract nature of art. Abstract does not attempt to represent reality in any way, shape, or form. We see that in block painting, we see that in general abstract work, we see that in improvisation work. This was seen as art without boundaries. As we come up toward the mid-1900s, we are looking at Surrealism. Now, this was realistic, but almost alternate reality. It was very unnatural in its irrational imagery. So we see realistic ideas, but it's completely out of reality itself. So it sought to release potential of the unconscious mind. It was an art form meant to challenge the mind and challenge the social norms. And then we have abstract expressionism. Hello, 1940s, post-World War II. This is where art became inspired by the unconscious mind, where it was completely emotionally driven. It was drip art, it was splatters, it was freehand. This is the emotion picture that I painted the other day and I showed you all. This was very much done in the idea of abstract expressionism. Then we come into consumer-driven art. Hello, 50s and on. We began to see pop art or pop culture artwork. These were things that had no storytelling, no meaning. They weren't made to bring out emotion. They weren't meant to tell a story. They were just art pieces based on the popular things of the day. And so we have come to our contemporary art. This is where artists began to broaden their horizons. They added in textures, reality, along with the abstract. They brought in multimedia work with sand and fabrics and papers and textures, all sorts of fun things. And there you have it. That is modern art in a nutshell, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep your eyes open for our art assignment where we are going to be practicing perspective. See y'all soon.